taking the, I know it's hard to take the historical aspect and kind of separate at arm's length, but kind of emulating any other particular culture around the world, is it always in bad taste, or is there a way to do it with reverence?
No, I mean, it's about intent as well, and or lack of knowledge. You know, like, for example, you know, we see on runways recently, it's become ubiquitous to see the hipster headdress, you know, and we've seen this a lot at Urban Outfitters, and, you know, I think when people go to Urban Outfitters or buy or wear a hipster headdress, there is absolutely no knowledge, or maybe even they don't care. Maybe they do know the historical ramifications of that and why that might be problematic, and they just don't care.
Why is it problematic, though? You haven't addressed that. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not douchey, because it is.
Because it's a caricature. Because it's a caricature of the traditional culture that has been oppressed and exploited by us. So, white colonizing Canadians such as ourselves don't get to tell people.
Can we stop with the hand-wringing, please?
It's true!
I know, honest to God. You're not the world's police, Andrea. You don't have to police the world. I mean, you can speak out about people. You can speak out about oppression all you want, and that's fine. But we don't need people driving to bars and centering other people out. They have a right to do it, and they have a right to be called idiots for it. That's fine. But at the end of it, the idea that we all have to police each other is just ridiculous to me.
I actually applaud anybody who stands up bravely and calls out racism and homophobia and all these things.
You know what it does? It diminishes the word racism. When you start to chastise people who are doing nothing but just having a good time and being goofy, you water down the word racism. That's what you're doing here.
I'm not watering down the word racism when people who are feeling hurt by this caricature call it racism. I'm going to call it racism too.
Is it wrong if a white person wears a kimono?
I would say yes.
Why?
For this exact same reason.
But see, this is the thing. Are we going to get rid of the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians and the Florida State Seminoles and the Village People? You never listened to the Village People before? Of course you have. I mean, we're going to get rid of the Indian Motorcycle Club and the Indian Motorcycle Company. I mean, how far do you take this?
So really, so for you, it's you want the right to be able to mock other cultures and other people.
Well, what's the difference between showing reverence?
Legitimately oppressed for hundreds of years.
Everyone's been oppressed at some point. There's no question about that. But is there a difference between showing reverence to a culture and mocking a culture?
Yes, very much so. If you go to a handicraft market or an art store and you buy a dream catcher or feather earrings that have been made by a native person, and you show respect for that, rather than going to Urban Outfitters and buying a hipster headdress, there's a big difference between those two things. Likewise, going to a bar dressed in war paint and waving a tomahawk is not very respectful of Canada's history.
I'm just wondering, like, Andrea, in your opinion, what should the bar have done? Because I know a lot of people have been calling, you know, the bar should have been held accountable, and we all know, like, it hasn't been disputed that these people sort of came, it was their own party, but, you know, a lot of people are saying that the bar shouldn't have tolerated it. They should have denied service.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that completely.
But how can a bar deny service based on arguably arbitrary distinctions? Like what one person would call incredibly offensive could be absolutely acceptable to someone else.
Somebody actually did complain though, and a First Nations woman did complain, and she was told to get over it. It's just a costume. I mean, I worked in bars, and if I was at a bar and that party happened, I probably would have mentioned something to the management. Admittedly, they didn't plan the party, but you know, it might be something that maybe was tapped on the organizer's shoulder and they were getting complaints.
Just to be clear, you wouldn't let the Cowboys in, though, right? That's not offensive, because I've lost track of what I'm supposed to be offended about.
A completely archaic idea for a party anyway. It seems so old-fashioned.
Well, I think it was the quirkiness and hipsters do that. Andrea,
but don't forget, these people, many of them were from the UK, and they don't have the same understanding of cultural sensitivity that we do in Canada towards First Nations.
Doesn't that mean that we're not culturally sensitive to them?
Guys, I'm really sorry. We have to wrap this up. Andrea, Robin, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks. Thank you.
Wow. That was fun. Star Talk, star 8255. Text us at 71010. Let's keep this conversation going. Because no winner has been declared yet. Ryan, you should see his face. And you can, by the way, at newstalk1010.com. You're listening to In-Depth Radio, Newstalk 1010. The Heart and Stroke Lottery early bird deadline is in 3.
For example, we see on runways recently, it's become ubiquitous to see the hipster headdress, and we've seen this a lot at Urban Outfitters, and I think when people go to Urban Outfitters or buy or wear a hipster headdress, there is absolutely no knowledge, or maybe even they don't care. Maybe they do know the historical ramifications of that and why that might be problematic, and they just don't care.
That's Andrea Houston from Extra Magazine. Yep, can't say I've ever read that, but I'm pretty sure it's not written for me. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. There you go. She was upset, and clearly upset, John, about the Cowboy and Indians party that was held, not sponsored by or advocated by the Rhino Bar out in Parkdale. Apparently people showed up dressed as Cowboys and Indians. We've got some pictures in front of us. Headdresses, face paints. Cowboys wore cowboy hats and bad shirts and boots and all that kind of stuff, and people decided through Twitter to start posting pictures of this. People took offense, actually rushed down to the Rhino, one guy by cab, costing him $30 to voice his protest.
Although that's not that far in Toronto.
Well,
$30 will get you about 6 blocks.
Might have been sitting in traffic the whole time, who knows. But this has now started a conversation both on Twitter, where I'm being called everything from a racist to somebody who enjoys white privilege. Here's one that I like the most. Ryan Doyle is apologizing for racism. Shut the blank up, white man. Your opinions aren't needed on this. It's interesting because people assume that just because you're white, that your people in some point in time were never oppressed or persecuted or treated poorly. And I can tell you, as somebody from Irish descent, I mean, maybe you need to get your textbooks out, and maybe some of you out there haven't done any reading, but Irish people were considered a different race of people back in the day. Even in Toronto, in this country, there were certain places where Irish people couldn't travel in this city. But I'm not going to sit here hundreds of years later on the radio and wring my hands over it. I'm going to get on with life and hope that, people won't mock my culture. But if they do, I'm not going to get myself that offended that I'm going to start writing and going crazy and losing my mind over it. You have the right to do it.
There is a difference, though, between levels of persecution. I don't doubt that. But we were talking about this during the break, that just about every single cultural group or nationality has been victimized.
Well, that's what I'm illustrating.
With the exception of perhaps royalty around the world. So I guess some stuff is more recent, some stuff's a little more fresh and stings a little more. Now, this Cowboy and Indian party...
Can I ask you one quick question about that tweet? Is it not racist in some way to say, white man, your opinions don't matter? Is that not racist in itself? Or are you not allowed to be racist against white people?
It's very ironic. Let's put it that way.
All right.
This whole Cowboys and Indians thing is based, if I can just, extrapolate myself on this.
Please do, John.
It's based on, when kids used to play Cowboys and Indians.
Did it myself when I was a kid. Must have been a racist too. At the age of 6.
And the thing is, I remember doing that, and it wasn't like no one wanted to be the Indians. Sometimes people wanted to be the Indians because the Indians had bow and arrows. It was their place. They had bow and arrows. They were defending their land. There was no malintent when the kids did it.
There was an equal coolness to both sides.
There was. So I think, this is kind of derivative of that. It's not to say that, white people moving west and slaughtering the First Nations people was not pretty horrific. It was. But this is more based in popular culture than in any sort of genocide. Can I say that?
Yeah. Had this been a party to celebrate how we off the Indians, and there was a big banner that says, "Congratulations, white man, you off the Indians,"
that would be inappropriate.
It would be inappropriate. I still wouldn't say you shut it down, but it's inappropriate.
Yeah. No,
at the end of it, it's inappropriate.
And there's so many examples that we're getting on text 71010. A hula skirt, a sombrero. If you go to Mexico and pick up a sombrero and bring it back to Canada,
you can't do that, John.
Is that racism?
Oh, of course it is. Travesty.
When you go to Epcot Center and we've got all those, they got Norway and America and Canada, and
should be shut down.
Is that racist? And someone said dressing in drag. Yeah. Is that
racist? Or not racist, but is that horribly offensive? I think those are good questions. Yeah, and I think I answered them all with sarcasm. Listen, stop being so offended. Yeah, it's like we have nothing better to do in our world than to just get offended.
But you know where I will draw... Andrea mentioned Urban Outfitters. There's been a style that's been around. It's still, you can see it every now and then. It's very hipster. Remember Yasser Arafat? His specific...
Checkered scarf?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I see hipster douchebags wearing those, that makes me angry.
Okay. But you can be angry. I will not take away your right to be angry.
That seems completely insensitive to a lot of crap going on, no matter which side you might be on.
Yeah.
That seems ridiculous. Again, you're putting a lot of thought in it.
Lorraine, go ahead. Hey, Lorraine. Is she there? Hello, Lorraine. That's okay. I'm offended that Lorraine didn't pick up. Peter, go ahead.
Hey guys, this is obviously, as you know, been a topic that's been going on for years, how sissified and how just, oh my god, if you're a comedian, get ready to be taken to Human Rights Commission, whatever. But, you know what, I mean, Edmonton Eskimos, the Redskins, etc., college, university, professional teams, you never see any of these protesters out front of those. When thousands and tens of thousands of fans come in, it's just gutless. And I'm just so sick and tired, really, as I'm sure you guys are, of people who have nothing better to do, become offended at absolutely nothing. Their names.
You make a good point right off the top, Peter. The idea of the Edmonton Eskimos, they still exist, or you're supposed to get all offended by that? Or?
Well, I'm actually curious to know where First Nations people feel about that, or what the Inuit feel about the Edmonton Eskimos.
I'm not curious.
You think they would have weighed in at some, or been asked?
Right. They probably look at it and go,
I mean, there are a lot of professional and university and college teams, especially in the States.
The Florida State Seminoles still allow men to ride a horse into the stadium with a headdress and face paint still, with a flaming spear and plant it in the middle of this field. Until that guy stops, you can have your parties.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of native history in Florida.
Yeah, but the Seminoles down there, most of them don't mind. They support it. They say, yeah, go ahead, do your thing. We get it. It's a tribute to us.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, we still have the Orangemen parading in front of the Irish Catholics. We still have on Remembrance Day Soviet Army members in Canada marching when Stalin murdered over 50 million people. That's still allowed. And I'm sure there's a lot of Eastern European people that don't want to see Soviet flags or Russian flags flying, or the Irish Catholics don't want to see the Orangemen marching. But I think that this was a favor to the Native community because we're talking about it right now. So I think that people...
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the kind of conversation anybody wanted to have.
You don't know how this might have been set up purposely so that it would cause a stir. I mean, what's the best way to get heard? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
I hardly think this was a vast conspiracy by First Nations people.
I doubt it.
Really? That's where we're going with this. How about this is a great text message.
Very top of mind, though.
Next time I see someone dressed like me, I'm going to blow a gasket. Regards, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
I love when he writes it.
Leonardo. Yeah.
Signed
on the telephone.
We're going to come back in 60 seconds while Offense Week continues here on Friendly Fire.
What are we getting offended about next?
Super Bowl ad that you're supposed to find offensive.